Do you wonder if others are dealing with the same project management challenges as you? Not sure where to turn for guidance and leadership? Office hours are in session as we discuss project management and PMOs with global leaders, hearing their story and learning their secrets to success. Our goal is to empower you and help you elevate your PMO and project management career to new heights. Welcome back to Project Management Office Hours with your host, PMO Joe.
Welcome, everyone, to Project Management Office Hours. We're the #1 live project management radio show in the U.S., broadcasting to you today from around the world here in Phoenix as well as Israel. And I'm your host, PMO Joe, and for the next hour or so, we'll be talking project management with our special guests who we'll introduce in a moment. Before we get started on the show, though, I wanted to let everybody know there's a great conference that's currently ongoing today and also tomorrow. It's called the Project Management in Practice 2021 Conference. It's hosted by Boston University. You can go out to projectmanagementinpractice.com to register. There's still a full day of speakers for tomorrow. All of the sessions are being recorded, so even the ones that you didn't catch live today, you could still capture them. And you can get up to 16 PDUs for this event. Several great speakers, of course. Some of them have been guests on our show, so we're fortunate to have that. And about an hour after we wrap up this show, I'm going to be headed over there and speaking live to everybody in Boston. So really excited. We're going to be doing a case study review of the value of project management from one of the clients of the PMO squad. Tomorrow's lineup includes Suzanne Madsen and Andy Kaufman, both who've been on the show. Also Tay Wu, Joe Justice, and many others. So I strongly encourage everybody, head out to projectmanagementinpractice.com, register for that event, and I think you'll get some good learnings through that. Also, the PMO Global Awards is getting ready to start up their judging for this year's competition. So I strongly encourage everybody to head out to the PMO Global Awards website, see the different countries who are participating, and track the results as we see which countries advance towards becoming the PMO of the year. It's always an exciting competition that they put on. And we'll be having Americo Pinto on as a guest later this year as well. Certainly, we want to thank our sponsors, the PMO Squad and the PMO Leader. Please go out to their websites, see all of the great offerings that are available through them, and see how they can help you improve your project management within your organization. Also, a reminder to visit projectmanagementofficehours.com to see all of our upcoming episodes, listen to our previous shows, and learn more about all of the guests we've had on over the years. And speaking of guests, super excited to have with us today our first guest from Israel. Thank you, Hamutal Weisz and Daniel Zitter, for joining us from Israel. Welcome.
Hey, Joe.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. If you could take and it's been a while since we've had two guests on at once. The past several shows, we've had just one guest. So it's going to be a fun dynamic to chat with both of you. But Hamutal, if you could take a moment just to introduce yourself to the audience and let them know a little bit more about you, that'd be great.
Well, thank you, Joe. Well, I'm a seasoned entrepreneur, an experienced project manager. This is a passion of mine. I'm the author of the book called Being a Project Manager, which I wrote together with my partner, Daniel. I'm a lecturer in project management and a sort of gamification expert specializing in developing games and serious games for educational purposes.
Fantastic. Thanks. And you, for those who don't have the video of this and you're going to be listening, Hamutal has this fantastic setup. She should be hosting her own podcast there.
Hamutal teaches a lot from afar, so that's part of the setup she has there.
Yeah, that's great. And Daniel, if you can take a moment, please introduce yourself as well.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Zitter. I'm an industrial engineer. I've been in the project management industry for over 20 years now, consulting in different organizations like Intel, Amdocs, and dozens of different companies where I helped both in setting up PMOs, managing projects on my own, implementing project management systems, and so on. So it's something I find myself very lucky. I mean, I'm a person that really enjoys what I do. So, and I enjoy waking up in the morning and going to work. So I don't know too many people like that. So I really feel that I'm a lucky guy. And I really enjoy it. So yeah, that's what I do every day.
Well, thank you both for joining me. And Daniel, I think you and I have that in common. I don't feel, since I started the PMO squad over 8 years ago, I don't feel I've gone to work once. Right?
That's great. Yeah,
I'm just doing what I do, right? I no longer have to go to a job. I just get to do what I love.
Yeah, that's fun. That's really the greatest way to do it.
Absolutely. All right, so let's dig in and talk some project management, get to know both of you a little bit better, and certainly go over some of the items that you want to share with everyone. One of the things I love about our show is that we are international, that we get to learn about project management from around the world, because it is a global profession, and we can learn from one another because we all have unique challenges and opportunities. If we think about what your experiences are, what are some of the challenges of learning project management that you've encountered that you think that you'd be able to share with us?
Well, Joe, there are various challenges in learning and in teaching project management. I think that most of which involve making decisions under uncertainty and soft skills. And we should remember that project management is applied by diverse professionals in a variety of industries, including construction and engineering, information systems, biotechnology, marketing, service, and so on. And in the last few decades, there has been a growing trend in business and social organizations to manage by projects. And as a result, there is a growing interest in project management education. And we know that the traditional education of project management was based, mostly on understanding the iron or golden triangle of cost, schedule, quality that was used to measure performance and success, using two leading international project management guides, which I believe most of us know, the PMBOK, the project management body of knowledge by the PMI, and Prince2, the European standard. Both guides are used widely to teach project management, although they include very limited regard to soft skills. And over the years, project management educators like myself have realized that not only are project heterogeneous by nature and require an understanding of a wide range of topics, but also the modern project management organizations deal with high level of uncertainty and complexity. And it is known that traditional education of project management simply does not prepare project managers for the mission. And the common established methodologies for project management taught in universities and trained in organizations do not provide practical methods to handle the complexities involved in managing initiatives and making decisions on an array of interrelated issues under uncertain conditions. And this is where simulation tools play a big role when training project managers to simply experience real-life project management challenges while sitting around the table. And we find it so often the lack of practical methods in theoretical trainings.
You know, Joe, when Hamutal and I met about 8 years ago, we had this long conversation. One of our shared experiences were that we were both teaching project management in organizations a lot. We sat down, we talked about this, and, Hamutal told me, I've been teaching for a long time and I get really great reviews. People are saying, you're a wonderful lecturer. Thank you so much. But, I finished the course. We studied together now for, 5-10 days. What do I do tomorrow morning? And that's something that I also heard. People would come back to me and say the same things, and I would really get offended. I would say, guys, we sat here, we talked about these issues for so long. What are you talking about? What do you mean you don't know what to do tomorrow morning? So this was a shared experience, and we started thinking, at the beginning, you try to say that maybe it's their fault, but then you kind of realize that maybe it's you. So we tried to analyze and understand why this actually happened and why people react like that to our training. And when we came to a conclusion saying that we're teaching them a lot of project management techniques and what you need to do, what project management is, and less about what you need to do to be a good and successful project manager. So that brought us to our first project together. This is where Hamutal and I decided we want to do something together. And our first project together was to write the book. So we wrote the book and we entitled it Being a Project Manager. And there we talk about actually what you have to do as a project manager versus what project management is. So that's kind of the direction we took it.
Yes, we actually stopped teaching project management as a subject. Rather, we started trained project managers for the mission of being a project manager, and it's a big difference.
Yeah, I think back to my time at Bell Helicopter, where I used to work and ran the PMO there, and pilots of helicopters are trained on what do you call all the different parts of a helicopter? How do you use the stick? How do you do that? But that's the theoretical learning. After that, they actually put you into a simulator and you simulate flying a helicopter before they go out and fly. I think what I'm hearing you say is, as project managers, we never put them into the simulator. We never give them an opportunity to learn to fly before they actually go fly. So we're asking them to fly based only on the theory. Right? They haven't had that ability to simulate.
That's absolutely right. And I really wanted to come to this topic later on, but what we really were looking for was a way to help project managers simulate, as you said, their own job. So that's part of what we did. When we can tell you more about that when we talk about our game. But that's definitely it. That's the exact example that came to mind.
So you had touched, I think, a little bit on how you guys came together. You mentioned both were instructors, and about 8 years ago you wrote the book. But you've also created a company together. So what's the story behind that, and how did that all take place?
So I hope it's okay, Hamutal. I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a pretty interesting story. So Hamutal was teaching, she had a course in one of the organizations, and they wanted somebody to come in and speak about project management information systems. So Hamutal looked me up and she called me and she asked me to come and speak in her course. And
I'm sorry. Every time you tell this story, I get irritated. I'm sorry, but go ahead. Continue.
No, go ahead. You can.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, so she calls me up. I was supposed to come there. And the day before, I get a call from a customer, and they scheduled a conference call with France, and I had to be in that conference call. So I sent one of the engineers that worked for me to speak in her course. Turns out that Hamutal was not very happy with the change.
To say the least of.
Yeah. So she called me up and she said, Daniel, we need to talk. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But, I'm just finishing up my role at the company that I was working at, and I'll have more time next week. Maybe we can meet up. So we scheduled an hour to meet in a coffee shop near Hamutal's house. And I went over there. We were supposed to talk for an hour. I think we stayed there for 3.5 hours discussing different things and different topics. So it was a really, really interesting meeting. And that's where we came across, what I told you before, our common
experience in teaching.
Experiences, yeah. And then we decided we wanted to do something together. So that's how it all started. And after the first project, we decided we enjoyed working together and we wanted to do more together. So that's the beginning.
Only after we had the book written, we actually started working together as a company, as partners.
Mm-hmm.
And that PM Zone, of course, is the name of your company. And so just touch on that a little bit as well. A PM Zone, is that a Israel only focused organization, or do you work outside of Israel? Where is your footprint?
So we're very focused on Israel. We do consulting work in Israel. We feel that doing consulting is a very local thing. It's hard. I mean, I have worked in the United States. I've worked at Intel plants in the United States. I did some work for Boeing at one point. I mean, I did several different jobs in different places. But being a consultant has a lot to do with the culture and knowing the people and the ways and the language. So yes, we're very focused on Israel with our consulting. But with our training and with other materials that we're developing, our games, our book, we're more global on that. So it's not things that we do. We partner up with other companies and we do other things with other companies.
Yeah, and that certainly makes sense. And I know you've been sponsors of the PMO Global Awards, right? I had mentioned that earlier. You sponsored that, and you participated as judges in that as well. So
yeah,
you certainly have a global perspective that you bring to our profession, and that's certainly appreciated by all of us. Because as I said, we have to learn how project management works within other countries in order to find ways that we can make it work in practice. Right, like you've mentioned, because just as example, right, working with the PMO leader, where we have your game and your books featured there, we've learned that in some countries, PMOs report into project managers instead of project managers reporting to PMOs. There's geopolitical pressures where some nations have sanctions and they don't have access to funding that other countries do, but they still run projects. So how do you do that in those situations? And I think it's so important to bring on guests like yourselves so that we get a perspective that isn't nearsighted, right? It's truly global in perspective. So as we continue to chat today, I think we'll be able to pick up on a lot of that as well. So I'm really looking forward to more about the games component, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about this. Tell me about, why do we play games, right? What's the value and using games as part of our project management education?
So the idea of games in the service of education was introduced by a researcher called Clark C. Ebb. In 1975, he wrote a book called Serious Games. And he says that reduced to its formal essence, a game is an activity among two or more independent decision makers seeking to achieve their objectives in some limiting context. And in recent years, the use of serious games for educational purposes, mainly computer and digital games, has been significantly increased with the aim to promote students' motivations for learning. And the term serious games, it might sound a little bit like an oxymoron. One of my favorite definitions of it is games that do not have entertainment, enjoyment, or fun as their primary purpose. However, Abt clarifies this definition, and he says that games may be played seriously or casually, and that we are concerned with serious games in the sense that these games have an explicit and carefully thought out educational purpose and are not intended to be played primarily for amusement. But this does not mean that serious games are not or should not be entertaining. So in recent years, gamification has become primary concept in training and in learning new skills. Gamification meaning the application of game elements and techniques to non-game problems such as business and social impact challenges. And it is perfectly suited to the effort to retain knowledge and create engagement. And this is why we are seeing more and more games in the service of education. And I can really see the impact of playing games whenever I teach any of my courses. It's a big difference than just listening to someone talking about something.
Yeah. Joe, 2 years ago, I was over in the PMI Conference in Ireland. And I was very surprised. We thought we were very forward, and we have the concept of playing project management games, and we're the only ones. But out of, I think they had about 35 lectures there. There were 3 lectures, including mine. I was speaking there with Dr. Baird Holtzman, who helped us research about the game. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But so I was there lecturing with her, and we had 2 other people that were talking about playing games in order to learn project management. So we found that it's something that other people thought about in parallel. So that was really exciting that it's not just us, So it means that, there's a market out there that thinks similarly. So it's really exciting.
It is not a new concept. It is well known already, but not so many people are actually using it, or at least not good enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, if we think back just to our everyday lives, when we were young, what did our parents always tell us? Go play.
Exactly.
And what did we learned more than just about playing with army men or playing card games or board games? There was the interaction right between
Absolutely.
that. You learn more than just what's in the game by playing games.
Exactly. That's exactly the point, Joe. I really agree with you. And that's what we're trying to bring back. So, yeah.
Yeah, we've had guests on that have talked about in the past, right, how the play and fun and interactive, lighthearted, and breaking away from the stresses of our work can create bonding elements for us to be able to build relationships beyond what we normally do. And in those moments of key stress later on in a project, you need to be able to rely on those moments where you've bonded, right? So I'm so intrigued. I mean, and obviously for most people probably don't know, we've talked offline quite a bit about your game, and I'm excited about the game as well. We're going to learn more about that as we continue chatting today.
Mm-hmm.
But I just love the fact that as adults, we can utilize what we learned as children and to be able to use it in a professional setting that one wouldn't normally expect. Perhaps that's what we can do.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And that's a lot of what brought us back into this games and, developing a game and so on.
So how do help, I guess you have a far more, we'll call it clinical perspective on this than I do. I just like playing games. But if we think about the clinical side of this, why are games good for learning, right? How do we learn more playing games than maybe we did if we just had a course that we received from an instructor?
Right. So, we, Hamutal and I, when we teach courses, we play a lot of games. We incorporated a lot of different games into our courses because we find that people are much more engaged when they play something or when they're involved in something. So we started that a long time ago. And what we find is that people tend to really learn more when they're doing something rather than just learning about it. So the whole concept of doing and playing and participating and not just, sitting back and listening, you get much more out of it. And what we hear from students and from, other partners is that when you have people play the game and they're more engaged, they feel like they actually did something and they gain experience, as you said before, of actually playing the game and about the concept that they're trying to learn. So, yeah, it really helps with that. And, you touched on this before when you talked about the helicopters and simulators, because we have pilots and pilots obviously go and they use simulators to learn how to be better pilots. We also have, my sister works for a company that does simulators for doctors, where they can actually go in and simulate doing an operation before they actually go and do it. There's a company in Israel that does 3D, 3D profiles of organs, and the doctors can actually work on the organ before they went in, after they simulate what it looks like inside the body of the patient. So you have simulators in other businesses, even businessmen. They have business style board games. You know any of those, Joe? Have you ever played one of those?
I've played these catapult games, right, where you build, you try to build a catapult as a team, and who can throw an object further, right? I've done that.
Right, that's more a team building kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, there are business model games out there that talk about sharing knowledge with other business owners, getting leads and giving leads to other business owners. So anyway, there's a whole ecosystem of how you can learn through simulations. And when Hamutal and I talked about this for the first time, we said, why don't we go out and look for a game that's for project managers and where they can simulate actually managing a project. And we started looking. And surprisingly enough, we couldn't find any game. Okay. So we didn't go off saying, hey, we want to develop a game. We said we want a game to incorporate into our courses. And then when we looked for one, we were really surprised to find that we couldn't find one. So that's when we decided that we want to take this whole game playing step forward and develop our own game for project managers so they can simulate and they can actually get the experience while playing the game and incorporate the skills and things that they've learned with us in the course on the game.
And also, Joe, board games in particular, because these days we're always looking for digital games, but board games in particular enable this interaction and communication between the players. So it has many other values, like team building, and it strengthens bonds and improve many human skills. And it is a very, very good method to capture complex environment for learning purposes using enjoyable hands-on experience. And personally, I simply love the physical aspect of the game, the board, the cards, the playing pieces, money, etc. And I believe this alone creates a feeling that is really, really hard to capture in any other medium.
So let me go slightly off script for you on this one. Hopefully I don't catch you off guard too much on this. But last night, my family and I, we watched a movie called In the Heights. It's a new movie that Lin-Manuel Miranda came out with. And it's about a section of New York City that's tied very closely to the Dominican Republic. And it's a musical. There's lots of singing and lots of dancing, but we learn the culture of that part of New York City and the Dominican Republic country, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not tied to that other than being originally from New York. I'm not tied to that in any way, but I loved seeing how their culture operates and how we can learn from that culture, how they enjoyed life, how they celebrated life, how they went about that. So what I'm wondering, from your perspective, with a global view of the world, but certainly within Israel as well, is there cultural differences with gameplay that you've come across that are unique to your region or your experiences with others around the world?
I've worked in other places in the world, and everyone, even in Israel, okay, if I go to different companies, everybody thinks that they're very unique in the things that they have to do and what kind of projects they have. But what I found that in general, a project is a project is a project. Yes, there are cultural differences in the communication styles, in the formality of things. I can tell you stories about informal conversations that I had at Intel plants in the US, where, in the formal meetings, we were clashing, the contractor with Intel, and things that were happening between them. But when we went out to the bar, we would go out together at 4:30 every Friday. We would go out and drink together. It was a big thing in the U.S. That's another cultural thing. In Israel, that doesn't work. But that's something that we really did a lot there. And when we would talk to them informally about things, we really solved a lot of the issues that we had in the project in these informal conversations. So obviously there's a lot of communication differences and styles, but the issues, problems, challenges that you have within a project are very similar in different cultures, is what I found. And again, I'm not an expert on this, but that's what I found. I can tell you a real cute story. I mean, we played our game for the first time. Not for the first time, but we played our game with some students from the U.S., foreign students in the U.S. We played it in the University of Tel Aviv. So these were foreign students that came for a year, and they played the game, okay, with one of the courses that are taught there. And there was this one guy, and he decided to buy all of the cheap resources in our board game, which meant that nobody else other than him could move on. So he got everybody stuck. They were all sitting there playing with their phones, and I walked over and asked them, what's going on? And they said, well, this guy bought all the cheap resources. We can't play. So I guess you could say it's, I don't know if it's cultural. It's that guy, that was very competitive, and he wanted everybody else to lose the game. He thought that was the goal. But yeah, that's something that we haven't encountered since or before, that something like that happened. So, things happen.
I think that in this case, it was a matter of experience. He was relatively young with no actual experience, because we have a completely different story playing with experienced project managers and lecturer who immediately started cooperating with each other. Now, when we play the game, we don't tell them if they need to compete or to cooperate. We let them figure this out on their own, because this is all part of our post-game discussion. But you can immediately see the differences between experienced and less experienced project managers. So I'm not sure if this was a cultural difference, but I do believe that, like the example you said, Daniel, about going after works for drinks, I think that playing games is such a great method to bring everyone together and eliminate differences. All of a sudden, we're playing with different people from all over the world, and we're simply playing, almost like children. And so I'm not sure if there are cultural differences in this aspect of playing the game for learning purposes.
Yeah, and that certainly makes sense. And as you guys were talking, I was reminded of Elizabeth Heron out of the UK had spoke at International Project Management Day a few years ago about gamification and how to introduce more of that, right? So for people who are interested, that we've had Elizabeth on the show previously, but she provides, I think it's only about a 30-minute talk on how to introduce games in general, not a specific game, but how we can all benefit from that, and certainly ties into what you guys are all talking about today.
Yeah.
So how do you go from instructor, consultant, trainer into, hey, we're going to jump into the board game business? How do you make that leap to introduce that into your business?
So you're absolutely right. I mean, we're project managers ourselves. We're trainers. We're subject matter experts, and just going into this whole playing games was a transition. And to answer your question, I really like playing games. I play games with my family. For instance, have you played Settlers of Catan? That's a really popular game here in Israel. I know it's also around the world.
I haven't played it, but I am familiar with it, but I haven't played myself.
Okay, so playing that game with my family, with my two boys and with my daughter, I found with my wife that we find out about different ways our children deal with different things like negotiation and communication and different things that they do through the game, because in this game you have to swap different elements amongst yourselves, and there's a lot of competition, and you can gang up on someone. So through the game we found things that we really liked about our kids and things that we thought, hey, we need to talk about this. So after the game, we were able to have meaningful discussions about things that happened in the game. So it's not as intimidating as talking about things that happened in school and stuff like that, or taking that into the project management field, talking about a project manager and what he did in his project. I'm not talking about your project. I'm talking about what happened in the game. So he doesn't have to be very defensive about it. So having that experience with my kids and saying, okay, I can do this and I can learn a lot about my kids and I can teach them a lot afterwards in a safer environment. So that's what really brought us into this whole concept of, okay, maybe we'll develop this serious game so we can play it together with our students.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that. I just, obviously we're all in this COVID pandemic, and I did our first vacation since the pandemic hit this past week, and I went with my youngest son, and we played 15 games of Monopoly during this vacation.
Wow.
I love Monopoly.
Yes. It was on. We did it on an iPad, so it was kind of a combo between digital and board, right? It was a combo version of it. But I already knew he was very competitive. But Daniel, I got to be able to see how his brain worked when he would want to make a trade, or how his personality would get a little bit nicer to me when things weren't going his way, right? So that's it. And I had never really looked at it with that perspective that you just talked about, of how we can learn about these individuals, but use those informal settings to provide a formal instruction.
We actually have a customer that uses a game shop, a workshop of the game to test out new project managers. So what they do is they invite a bunch of project managers to this workshop day before they even hired them. And they sit them down and they play the game, and people from the organization watch them play. And it's amazing how much you can learn about people while they play, about both their personality, but also about their knowledge and technique.
Right.
So it's really, really interesting. I mean, we played a game what was it, Hamutal, 2 months ago with really young kids. I'm talking 18 to, I think the oldest guy in the room was 27 or something like that. But most of them were 18, 19, 20. And we didn't expect much of the game. To be truthful, I thought that it would be very basic, learning the terms and, doing just basic things. But these guys took it really, really seriously. And they did things there that I was really, really impressed with. I mean, the way that they planned out things. They brought out a board and they started charting things out. I mean, they did a lot of things that much more experienced project managers with formal education didn't think of doing. Right. So, you get to see these different perspectives and the different personalities and knowledge base through the game. So, yeah, that's also a really interesting thing there.
And do you take, right, so how do you use it, right? Or do you bring the game as part of your training? Do you just use it as standalone? What's the way that you've incorporated the game within your organization?
So, Hamutal, do you want me to take that?
Go ahead, please.
Okay. So we actually have different sessions for learning about project management, where we have different games incorporated, and we have special workshops for the actual game. And we use it in different scenarios. So we have some courses or some workshops that we go to organizations that we haven't taught project management at all there. So this is our introduction to the company. And what we try to understand there is what are the challenges of the project managers and their organization, and doing so through the game. So we actually play the game, but then through discussions and questionnaires and a workshop after that, you can bring up a lot of the things that are bothering the different stakeholders within the organization. So that's one way we use the game. Another way is for organizations that have had training already. So, we don't believe in a wham bam kind of training thing. You come in, you teach project management for a week, and then you leave and everybody knows everything. It usually doesn't work that way, okay? So what we try to do is find things to help the organizations that we work with to train and to actually remind people about the different concepts that we learned in the training sessions. So we have different ways of doing this. We do forums where we bring the project managers together once every month, every 2 months for a couple of hours. We talk about things, we have topics. But one of the things that we also do is we bring them in and we actually have them play the game. And through the game, again, we can remind them about concepts and things that we learned during the sessions and the training thing. So we use it in different places, really in different ways and according to what they need. I also talked about the companies that use it for hiring purposes. So there are just different ways of using the game in different organizations.
And one other thing is that the game can be played many times. It's not a one-time game, so that we can meet the same people several times and each time play a little bit different, a little bit harder. We can adjust the difficulty level of the game based on their experience. So we like playing it at least twice.
Now, one of the things that we have in the game is the PMO concept. So you can play and you can have a PMO on every board. And we don't usually introduce that in the first time, usually not even in the second time that we play, but we can. But basically, as you go ahead and you play more and more, you can also introduce more functions into the game. You can introduce the PMO, and the PMO has a role like it has in real life, helping the projects and the program in a general way, putting together reports, looking at the overall picture, maybe moving resources around the project. So you can just really simulate and emulate the things that are happening in your organization in the game. And you have all these different levels of play. And it's really exciting to see because you can really play it with novice project managers, and you can play it with real sophisticated trainers. 2 weeks ago, I went over to play with a lecturer in one of the universities down south in Israel. I wanted to introduce the game to her, and we played, and she was under the impression that she'll be able to do the planning and do everything really quickly and very easily. I don't know what your experience, Joe, was in the game that we played, but her expectation was that she would, breeze through it. And she was very challenged. I mean, she looked at the game and she thought she knew what to do. And then when she started playing, she saw that her planning wasn't that great. Okay. And, she got excited and she got really into it because she wanted to show me how good and how good she is and how knowledgeable she is in project management. But yeah, it wasn't easy for her. I can tell you that.
We've had a lot of talk about the game, but we haven't really talked about the game yet, right? We've talked about it in context of gameplay, but we haven't talked about any of the specifics of the game. I mean, for those listening, right, we've played games our whole lives, but somebody had to create the game, right? Some creative mind out there actually created Monopoly or Risk or the Settlers, right? I mean, all of them were created by someone. So you guys created a board game, right? I mean, let's the basics of this is from scratch. You're able to put together a game that's for project managers and use concepts that we're all familiar with related to games, but that's not easy, right? I mean, how do you do that?
It's really not as easy as as it might look. And as Daniel told before, we actually wanted to buy a game. We were looking for a ready-made game, but we could not find any. So we only started developing when we actually didn't find anything. So I was going through training to learn how to develop games. And we also consulted with a company specializing in gamification to make sure the game is engaging and fun and doesn't only include educational value. And it was quite a challenge to incorporate the many heterogeneous aspects of project management and keeping the game fun. And I think it took us nearly 6 months to design the first prototype of the game. And then we played it with some colleagues and friends. And after the first design, there were a couple of more versions before we knew the game was, solid enough, mature enough to really get it out there. But ever since then, we have played the game so many times, and we are always refining it. So we keep learning about the game from the players, and by that we keep developing it. But it is not an easy process to develop a game. The logic of the game is probably the biggest challenge when developing, I believe, any game, but specifically in such a complex topic. But the design also needs to be meticulous, and you cannot just, print a few cards at home and call it a game. There's so much more to it.
It was really surprising to me, Joe, how much math is behind these games. So you really have to calculate everything and make sure that everything works, right? It's not just putting in numbers. And you have to think about the different options and how you can get there, and a lot of math. So yeah, it was not an easy process, but it was fun.
It was really, really fun, but the game economics and mechanics is really a complex issue. You should see our Excel files, holding all the calculations behind the scene, making the game playable.
Yeah, and Daniel had mentioned that I've had the good fortune of playing the game, and it is one of those things. I've only played once, but I've been doing project management for, I'm 53 years old, so probably 52 years now I've been a project manager, right? Just the way my brain works. So you think this is going to be easy. You just come in and you plan it and you go execute. But it isn't, right? It's a life of its own where you can use your experiences.
Definitely.
But the other thing that I found that was interesting is, and this could be one of those cultural components, is it's a game. So we're kind of pre-wired to want to win the game. Right. So your game isn't so much about winning as it is about learning. Right. And so I was trying to figure out how can I outplan my other competitors, right, to be able to win, when in reality I needed to lean on them and utilize them as a team to be successful. So it's a brilliant game because it makes you a project manager, right? It really does what it sets out to do when you don't even know it's doing it for you, right? That's the brilliant part of it that I found from my experience was I didn't know what was happening to me, but it was everything that it needed to be for me. And I've been doing this a long, long time. So it really was fun. It was enjoyable and it was great. And I can't even imagine how you guys put it all together, but it was awesome.
Thank you.
Hamutal, we need to put quotes from Joe in our website.
From Joe, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Saying, just quoting what he said there. That's really amazing.
I was just about to say that you should be our marketing expert.
Well, what are maybe leads into some of my next question. What are your plans for this coming year? Right, we're coming out of COVID, and I hope the world is recovering and we're getting back to a little bit of normalcy. what are the plans for you with the game and what you have going on for the next year or so?
So speaking of COVID, that was one of the, I wouldn't say triggers, but one of the accelerators that drove us to our next initiative. What we're doing right now, obviously during COVID, we couldn't meet and we couldn't play the game. And playing the game from afar just doesn't incorporate everything that we want it to have. So having said that, and also having customers that have locations around the world, like we work with Amdocs, and they have locations in Israel, in the US, and India. And when we told them that we wanted to play the game with them, they said, okay, but we need to play with everyone together. And we said, okay, but we only have this physical board game and we need to play that on the board. It wasn't feasible. So what we're doing right now, and what we're hoping to have ready within the year, is the digital game. So we're taking the concepts of the game and we're creating this online game that enables groups to play the game, both from organizations that are diverse and from different countries and different universities and so on, to play the game together and to learn about project management and their practices through the game. Now, it's a journey. It's a very interesting journey because turning the game into a digital game is not taking it, as is and moving it to the digital world. There are a lot of differences between the digital world and, and playing the game around the board. So we're dealing with a lot of that right now. We're designing the game at this point, and really interesting, really exciting, learning more about things that can be done, the better things that you have in digital games, and how to really use the digital world to make the game more effective and more fun in some places. So that's one thing that we're working on at this point. Another thing that we're doing, we have developed an agile board game. So this is a more classic board game or kind of classical project management. Doesn't really have to be a real classic kind of thing, but that's why we put it there. And now we developed another game to learn about the agile concepts and the ceremonies and the different aspects that you have there in agile. So we have a new board game called the Agile board game, and there you can learn more about the agile world. So that's another thing that we're working on. If we said that we had many iterations for our game, for the game we were talking about, the PM Zone board game, for this game, we've had 4 iterations so far.
Yeah, we're now at the 4th, I believe.
Yeah, so I don't think we have it completely done. I think we're very close now. We have played it in certain organizations and got really good feedback. We also played it in the university, one of the courses, and it was also good feedback. We still need to work a little bit about that, so hopefully we'll have that resolved very soon, and we'll be able to start playing that with other customers as well. So those are our big plans for the next year.
Well, it's fantastic, and you should have, your comment of we should have wrote that down. What you were saying, Joe. This is recorded, right? So you have it
written. Perfect.
And pull out this segment of the show and drop it out on the website as a referral. It's been a lot of fun, Hamutal and Daniel, to connect with you. It was a lot of fun to learn about your game and your organization.
Thanks so much for having us. We really had a good time.
Yeah,
yes,
certainly.
Very much.
Pleasure. And before we wrap up here, Hamutal, what's the best way that folks can get in touch with you? And if they want to learn more about the game or just you or any of the work that the PM Zone does, what's the best way for folks to contact you?
Well, there's my email address that we can provide. Also, I don't know if people will call me, but I can give you my phone number as well. And of course, through our website, we have all our contact details there at our website.
Our website is pmzone.com. So www.pmzone.com. And you can have all the information about the game. We have some videos of people playing the game there. You have the contact details of Hamutal and myself. And I think that would be the best way to do it.
Fantastic. And also the game is available out on the PMO Leader website. If folks were interested, they can go out there. Your book, of course, is available. And then I believe you're both out on LinkedIn as well. So if they want to connect with you there.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
So thank you both for coming on. Again, great to have you as our first guest from Israel, and hopefully we'll have others in the future. Certainly thank you again to all of our listeners, right? If we don't have listeners, we don't have a show. Be sure to visit projectmanagementofficehours.com to check out all of our upcoming and previous shows. I just posted on this LinkedIn yesterday. I did a sneak peek at the next 3 months of our guest list, and I was kind of blown away myself. I was like, wow, I've got a great lineup. Antonio Nieto Rodriguez from Belgium, Karsten Lay from Vietnam, Erica Flora here in the U.S., Americo Pinto from Brazil, Tim Creasy, one of the executives of ProSci, is going to be on and talking change management, and Marissa Silva from Portugal, the lucky PM. A great lineup coming up. And of course, all of these shows are recorded, so you can subscribe to Project Management Office Hours on your favorite podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, etc. Also, thank you to our sponsors, the PMO Squad and the PMO Leader. Please be sure to go out and visit those websites and see how they can help you benefit your project management team. That's it for now. Office hours are closed. Until next time, I'm PMO Joe, and you've been listening to Project Management Office Hours.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Project Management Office Hours with PMO Joe. You're not alone in your project management journey. We're here to help you achieve your goals. Subscribe to Project Management Office Hours on your favorite podcast platform to catch all of our episodes and hear industry leaders share their story and secrets to success.